On June 27, 2026, 5 Wildland firefighters were trapped by a wildfire in western Colorado. They had been sent into remote terrain by helicopter to fight the Knowles Fire. Hours later, the fire changed so rapidly that the crew called for an extraction. A helicopter was sent. It arrived within minutes, and it could not land. The smoke was too thick. The firefighters had one last piece of equipment designed for exactly this kind of emergency: small, personal fire shelters. They deployed them as flames overtook their position. 3 died that afternoon. A 4th firefighter, Nathan Matthews, survived the initial burnover but died nearly a month later from his injuries, and the 5th member of the crew survived. What happened in those few minutes is now the subject of a serious accident investigation. But the preliminary record already reveals something terrifying about modern wildland firefighting. Sometimes the danger isn't simply that a fire is burning toward you. It's that the conditions around you can change faster than the people trying to rescue you can reach you. The crew belonged to the Rifle Helitack operation, a specialized group of firefighters transported by helicopter to attack fires quickly in remote terrain. On the morning of June 27th, they were inserted into the area at about 9:36 a.m. At that point, the mission was initial attack. Get into the fire area, begin working, and try to contain the flames before they could grow into something much larger. The Knowles and Gore fires were burning in western Colorado, near the Colorado-Utah border. Other fires were burning nearby, and the conditions were already difficult. Then something changed. According to the preliminary investigation, satellite imagery showed that lightning had ignited another fire roughly 3/4 of a mile northeast of the Snyder Fire sometime between 12:32 and 1 p.m. Initially, fire managers believed this new ignition was a spot fire from the Snyder Fire. But the new fire began developing extreme fire behavior. The conditions were severe. Fuels were extremely dry. West-southwest winds were gusting as high as 50 miles per hour, with terrain making the wind effects even stronger. And that mattered for more than the flames. The wind was also pushing smoke down near the ground. For firefighters on the ground, visibility was becoming a critical problem. By 2:56 p.m., the crew was discussing the possibility of being extracted by helicopter. 2 minutes later, they reported that fire was near their position. The situation had moved from fighting a wildfire to trying to escape one. At 3:08 p.m., a helicopter was dispatched. The estimated flight time was only about 5 minutes. For a few minutes, there was still a possibility that the crew could be lifted out. Then the helicopter reached the area. At 3:19 p.m., it was unable to land. The smoke was too heavy. The rescue aircraft was there, but the conditions on the ground made the rescue impossible. For the 5 firefighters below, there was no longer an easy way out. They deployed their emergency fire shelters. These shelters are standard last resort equipment for wildland firefighters. They are not designed to make a person safe inside a major wildfire. They are designed to give a firefighter a final layer of protection when escape is no longer possible. The flames came over their position. 3 firefighters died at the scene: Emily Barker, 38, of Michigan; Nick Hutcherson, 27, of Arizona; and Sydney Watson, 27, of Alabama. Nathan Matthews, 43, of Lincoln, Nebraska, was badly injured. A 5th firefighter was also injured and survived. The tragedy did not end that day. Matthews remained under medical care for the injuries he suffered in the burnover. On July 24th, nearly 4 weeks after the fire, he died. He was 43 years old. With his death, the number of firefighters killed in the Knowles burnover rose to 4. The loss was felt far beyond the remote terrain where the fire had overtaken them. Barker, Hutcherson, and Watson were members of the Rifle Helitack crew and were remembered by colleagues, friends, and family at memorial services in Colorado. Hutcherson had served in the Navy. Barker was remembered for her commitment to firefighting and for helping open doors for women in the profession. Watson had dreamed of becoming a firefighter from an early age. Matthews was remembered by fellow firefighters as a member of the same Wildland fire community that had already lost 3 colleagues in the incident. But there is an important distinction between what is known and what remains unknown. We know the timeline. We know the crew was inserted into the area that morning. We know another fire developed nearby. We know extreme winds and dry fuels contributed to dangerous fire behavior. We know the crew requested extraction. We know a helicopter was dispatched, and we know heavy smoke prevented it from landing. What we do not yet have is a final determination explaining every decision that led to the burnover. A serious accident investigation team is examining the incident. That matters because wildfires don't behave like ordinary fires. A wildfire can move through terrain in ways that are difficult to predict. Wind can change the speed and direction of flames. Dry vegetation can allow fire to spread rapidly. Smoke can obscure the very landscape that firefighters are using to find an escape route. And when firefighters are working in remote terrain, distance becomes part of the equation. The helicopter that was supposed to rescue the crew was not hours away. It was minutes away. Yet 5 minutes was not enough. That may be the most unsettling detail in the entire timeline. At 3:08, the helicopter was on its way. By 3:19, it was there. But the smoke made landing impossible. The difference between rescue and disaster was measured not in miles, but in conditions. The Knowles burnover has also become part of a much larger story unfolding across the American West. By August, federal data showed firefighter entrapments had reached a 20-year high, while the country was experiencing an exceptionally severe wildfire season. That doesn't mean every wildfire disaster has the same cause. It doesn't mean the Knowles tragedy can be reduced to a single explanation. The investigation is still examining what happened, but the incident illustrates the fundamental problem facing wildland firefighters. The people sent into the fire are often making decisions inside an environment that can transform in minutes. For the 5 firefighters on June 27th, the mission began as another initial attack. They arrived by helicopter. They went to work. Then a new fire developed nearby. The smoke thickened. The winds intensified the conditions. The crew recognized the danger and requested extraction. A helicopter came, and still they could not get out. 4 firefighters would never return home. The final investigation may tell us more about how those last decisions unfolded and what lessons should be carried forward. But one fact is already impossible to ignore. The firefighters weren't unaware of the danger. They were trained for it. They had emergency shelters. They recognized when the situation had changed, and when they needed help, they called for it. The rescue helicopter came. The fire simply became more powerful than the rescue. That is what makes the Knowles Fire tragedy so difficult to understand, and why the answers still matter. Because the purpose of investigating a disaster like this isn't only to explain how 4 people died. It's to understand what happened in those critical minutes well enough that the next crew, facing the next fire, has a better chance of making it home.